Welcome back. Thank you so much for tuning in for what is going to be a massive highlight of the week as we head into the wild. Now, I think some of us, many of us on the show are dog people, some of us are cat people, and many of us are both. And then you get those individuals like Cathrine and Lizaene who are extreme cat people, big cats to be exact. And they are the founders of an awesome organization called Panthera Africa, a non-profit focused on education and awareness around big cats in captivity. We are absolutely thrilled to have them join us this morning to tell us a little bit more about these majestic creatures and what we can do at home to aid in the front line of the battle. And I'm going to call it a battle because that's where we stand at the moment in conservation. Ladies, thank you so much for joining us. Really is awesome to connect. Kat, I know that we've adopted you into South Africa from Norway, so thank you so much for your efforts and for being here. I'm going to talk about your organization first. You call it a true sanctuary. What does that mean exactly?
So the words of a true sanctuary, like a lot of people like the word, so they kind of brand it. But the really true meaning is that there's no breeding involved, there's no trading involved, and there's no interaction involved. So that's kind of the definition of a true sanctuary.
And this says to me that it's a lot more complicated to set up and run when it comes to ecotourism and all these funding models that we use. How do you guys go about your work? How do you go about rehabilitation? Because ultimately you want to see these big cats, these majestic animals back in the wild, but that's a process and not always as easy as just getting it done. So maybe, Lizaene, you can open a window into what you guys do exactly.
So we are more a retirement village for all these big cats. The unfortunate truth is the big cats cannot be released back into the wild. There is no proper wild left for them. Our wild population is already under threat with the human-animal wildlife conflict. So these guys will just live out the rest of their lives with us. And that's one of the big reasons we want to focus on the not breeding, because there is no place for these guys to go but behind fences. So that's why we do the running of the sanctuary.
No, we'd love to hear from you guys. 083-9133-728. If you'd like to ask any questions, we've got an expert panel with us this morning, and also pose your opinions. I know a lot of people sit on the fence here. Let's get real quickly here and talk about statistics. And I don't know if you know exactly, but how many big cats exist in captivity? And what are the, I mean, talk about breeding for hunting, canned lions, that sort of thing. How bad is the situation at the moment?
Well, as you say, the numbers are like this, but they say that in South Africa alone, there's about 8,000 captive lions. In the wild, they're now saying that there's less than about 20,000. So the situation is very severe. And also with regards to the tigers, for instance, there's more tigers in captivity than there are left in the wild in the whole world.
And we know that, I mean, the tiger probably stands out for me as one of the greatest big cats ever. We know that there are differences approaching different species of animal, and I think after the break we'll get into the plethora of species that you have under your care. But again, we'd love to hear from you guys. 083-91-33728. We're going to open the lines in just a moment, so please weigh in, pose any questions, and we're going to delve a little bit deeper into what we can do to help address the situation and the incredible work that they do at Panthera Africa.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Well, luckily on this continent we have predators bigger than the Fusa. We're back with Kat and Lizaene from Panthera Africa. Big cats in Africa don't have it easy in the wild or in captivity. We've heard some rather shocking statistics about how many of those incredible creatures exist in captivity just here in South Africa. But Panthera Africa, they're being offered a new lease on life, and we of course have a vital role to play ourselves. So we've spoken about a multitude of species already. Everyone focuses on the lions, on the tigers, and we'll get into that in a moment. But how many different species do you guys look after, and how difficult is it to cater? Because they all come from very different situations in the wild. Maybe I can put that to you, Lizaene.
Yeah. So we have caracals, jackals, lion, tiger, and leopard. And even just from individual to individual, one lion is not the same as the next. So all of them have their own enrichment ideas and their own feeding ideas, and we just need to adapt to it and cater for that.
I have to ask this question because I've seen a difference in my own experiences from viewing lions in particular in the wild and those in captivity. How different are they? I mean, you know, you've mentioned that we can't just re-release, especially lions, into the wild. How different do they develop from captivity to growing up in the wild?
I think the biggest thing is with the captive lions is their nutrition and their behavior. That's the biggest difference. And the wild, they hunt for themselves, they get enough exercise. So in captivity, it's extremely important to enrich them enough mentally and physically, and then of course to supplement their diets because they don't get natural fed meat.
And then you've got to make sure that the lions have a beautiful breeze to blow the mane.
Yes.
So you can take these amazing photos. Now, something we're not used to seeing in Africa are tigers. And you've got a pair of tigers. How do they find their way to your sanctuary? Oh, my word.
Well, we have here beautiful Race and Arabella, and they used to be cubs where I was a volunteer.
Okay.
So in that way, that's how we got to know them. And when we started the sanctuary, we thought, okay, let's create like a safe haven for them so we know that they are safe. And so that's how we came about the 2 tigers that are with us now.
When looking after tigers specifically, what considerations do you have to take into account? Because it's amazing to me that you guys are catering to such a broad spectrum of species. How do tigers really stand out as the big cats for you?
For me, they have a soul of a giant, like a gentle giants. They are absolutely incredible, and also like they're not from South Africa. So, but a lot of people ask us why do you have tigers? And as they are from Asia, we kind of say they are heavily bred here in South Africa, which people don't know.
Wow.
So they're actually all born here. And there are many, many thousands of tigers that are literally bred for the bone industry in Asia, which is kind of the truth behind the whole tiger industry.
Well, the ugly truth. And then very quickly, I don't know if we've got the caller online at the moment. We've just lost her, but she was asking about interactions. You mentioned this very briefly, but how do you feel about walking with lions, playing with cubs, those sorts of interactions that we have to admit play a vital role in ecotourism, in the funding of a lot of conservation?
Yes, the first thing with the funding is we do not do any interaction and our sanctuary is becoming self-sufficient. Then from an animal point of view, it cannot be nice for a wild animal to be petted 100 times a day. And the walking with lions, it's an exceptionally dangerous thing. It still stays a wild animal and they still have their instincts. So from an interaction point, we do not believe in that at all, no.
Emphatically so. Do you want to add something quickly?
Yeah, and in the way that I used to be a volunteer, and I came here with the story that these cubs are abandoned from the parents and so forth. And then you come there and then you actually learn that there's no future for them. And where do they actually go? So if you have a thought, where do the animals that I pet or walk with, where do they end up? And there's no wild to release them. And there's no genetic good gene pool for the lions. So this is very important to think about.
Yeah, man, it's really hard truths that you've got to take on board. But we're going to keep the ladies with us, and thank you so much, Jessica, for posing that very interesting question. We're going to continue the conversation. 083-9133-728. Time now to reconnect with you online.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Thank you so much for tuning in on International Wait for Nyquist Day! Yay! Oh, man, he does so much for other people, and I know he's really interested in what we're talking about at the moment, big cats. And we're talking to Kat and Lizaene from Panthera Africa. Am I saying it right? Panthera Africa. Yes. You've got to say it with gravitas. Yeah. We've got a caller on the line right now. Lindy, thank you so much for weighing in on the conversation. What is your question or your comment? Lindy.
Yes.
Good morning, hon. Thank you so much for tuning in. What's your question or your comment?
Well, I'd like to know, the lady mentioned that they use bones, the tiger's bones in Asia. What on earth do they use the bones for?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for a very good question. So, so the Asian traditional old belief has been in thousands of years that they believe that the power of the bones have like a healing effect, or they can be for sexual stimulations and so forth. Since the same with the rhino horns and the elephant, the ivory, that they have this belief that it is actually used for something that can be good for the human health. And in that way, we are kind of quite prominent in saying that we don't want to say that they are completely wrong, but rather to meet them with a respectful way and find a solution for it.
Well, I think it's also worth noting, I know China has finally made some massive advancements in how they control that space, but and, I study Kung Fu and we do a lot of Qigong, energy healing involved in that, and this is not necessarily the prevailing thought with all Asian countries.
No, not at all.
There is a big thrust, I think, coming from those that are dealing in that trade as much as anything else, not necessarily a supply and demand issue in that way. How do we then curb this? What is the key here? Who do we need to be focusing on to slow this down? Because there are very few people in your position doing the kind of work that you're doing, but there is a massive trade in illegal, and not just with big cats, but in all kind of animal species. Where do we start?
For me, it's education. It's to educate the next generation. You can stop captive breeding, but then they'll go to the wild and poach the wild. So you need to focus on education and spreading awareness.
And we're very privileged. We have managed to get approval to build an education center on our property. So within the next year or two, we will hopefully have this up. And then the idea is to then bring school group and children from Asia and from America, and in that way to make them fall in love and see these animals. And just thinking about, like, we lost a tiger for this bone trade industry. Sorry. And just to know where their future is, and kind of to these children, if they come here and see them, I think they will change the behavior in the wild.
Thank you so much for everything that you do on a daily basis and for fighting a good fight. I know it's a pretty thankless job, but you then do, of course, get to see these majestic animals in their space. So I'm sure that's its own reward. Cathrine, Lizaene, thank you so much. Hopefully we will have people flocking to your cause, and hopefully a new generation that will be free of this baggage that we are carrying at the moment. But it's been so wonderful to connect with you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
So please, you can keep those questions coming on our social media pages as well. We'd love to keep this conversation going as much as possible. Panthera Africa, do a little bit of research to see how you can get involved.